Could be a me thing. Anyway, hello everyone. How are we doing? Day one at Coabe. All right, we got a decently lively group here. It's not too bad. So, for those of you, let's start with this show of hands. Who's familiar with essential education? Okay, decent amount. So, for those of you that aren't familiar with essential education, we're a provider of digital as well as print curriculum for adult learners. So, kind of our specialty is to customize instruction or individualize instruction for students. So whether that be GED, HiSET, TABE, or CASAS, ABE, or HSE, each student is going to get an individualized pathway through our learning management system. A couple of things that we are offering here at COABE are three professional development guides that you get to pick from. So we have one on overcoming adult learning challenges. We know that a lot of students are undiagnosed with learning disabilities in K-12 education. You see them in adult ed. So that guide helps kind of create a plan for those students, inform instruction. We have our 3D differentiation guide, which covers different modalities in learning and how to teach to those strengths where those students find the best fit for them. And then lastly, we have our 6 anchors of student retention. How do we keep students motivated, engaged, and returning to class, which is probably the most difficult thing to do in adult education? Charlie over here has our essential education website set up currently. He's going to be spending some time talking about digital literacy skills. Quick update on that as we talk about computer essentials. We are working on some new enhanced features to computer essentials, which will consist of a new AI course that is in the works now. So that will be sometime coming this year, TBD at this point, but we have our development team working on it, our instructional design team putting together all of that information. So that will be something that will come in addition to the course now. But I'll pass it over here to Charlie to talk to you a little bit more about computer essentials.
Yeah, awesome. And everyone, you gave everyone a catalog? All right. Well, I appreciate everybody. As you all know, with the COAB sessions, they're hybrid. So there are some people who might be laying in their hotel bed watching this session on their phone or computer. They might be somewhere across the country. So I've done this a few times. I feel like I've kind of got it down as much as possible to a science, but it's still, a little bit of logistical back and forth, making sure everybody feels supported and included. But we're going to do our best today. So my name is Charlie Weeks. I've been with Essential Ed for almost 5 years now. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and used to work in a local program in Tulsa, Oklahoma for about 10 years, starting out doing adult ESL. I taught in Japan for a few years and thought I wanted to be a social studies teacher when I came back. And they said I needed to coach high school something if I wanted to be a social studies teacher, and that wasn't my plan. And so I shifted gears, and thankfully, the adult program in my nearby public school was looking for ESL teachers. As that started me on a path almost 20 years ago in the adult education field, and kind of haven't looked back ever since. I love what I do. I loved my time working with students, newcomers to the U.S. And then when my boss realized I had a little bit of a math background, she's like, "You're going to do GED math," and that kind of started me on a little bit of a different trajectory. But so I spent about a little less than 10 years at a local program, about 5 years in our state office in Oklahoma. And that's how I got to know some of the people at Essential Ed, and have been with Essential Ed for the last 5 years or so, doing training, consulting, professional development, and really just supporting our customers kind of post-sale, making sure they could kind of visualize what it could look like and all the ways that they and their teachers could use it. And so today, we're going to be talking about computer essentials and digital literacy in general, a little bit about how I think Computer Essentials is a great solution for programs thinking about how can we implement more digital literacy content, prep, conversation into our programs. I know some states have requirements for digital literacy components. So we're going to jump into today. So what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to kind of crowdsource with you all where you think the current state of digital literacy is at. Maybe yourself, your program, fellow teachers, your students. You feel free to share any of those, any thoughts there. Talk a little bit about what Computer Essentials is, a little bit about how it's configured and some of the content, how we've aligned it to standards, and then we're going to kind of circle back to more kind of big picture. Generally speaking, whether it's Computer Essentials or something else, how can we implement digital literacy topics into our classrooms? I know maybe we can just do a show of hands. Does your program have a standalone kind of computer digital literacy type of class, or are you just the thought that the hope is that you're going to kind of infuse it with the other 50 things you're supposed to be teaching? Or maybe there's a third option, but I'm seeing some nods and some, yeah, I'm kind of supposed to do it, but there's not really a standalone class. So yeah, that's probably pretty common. And so I think the implementation strategies that I kind of have, I mean, you don't have to have computer essentials to implement them. We can kind of talk big picture about how you could potentially slowly or in a very small way start to take steps to broach those subjects and start to, converse with your students about those things. That's the plan today. So let me kind of ask you all. So let's just start with you and your fellow instructors. I don't know, maybe you can just hold up your hand so I can have everybody see it. In the chat, if you're there, feel free you can give me a 1 through 5. So hopefully your colleagues aren't in the room and you're going to out them, but on a scale of 1 to 5 or maybe 0 to 5, how would you rate you and your colleagues' level of digital literacy? So again, you can show me on your hand. You can hide it if you need to put it against your chest. I'm seeing just numbers all over the board. Good. So we got some 3s and 4s in the back. I'm seeing some 0s, some 1s. So again, just, yeah, all over the place, which is fine. But again, so as instructors, there's more and more digital tools, right? So there's things that we need to kind of think through and figure out and be adept at navigating and moving around to be able to feel comfortable and confident to allow students to have access to all of these tools. And so that's pretty important. What about your learners? And maybe it's hard to generalize them, but let's say the learners that either you or your instructors interact with the most. What are your thoughts there? Let's say digital literacy on their phone. Let's start there. You feel like that's a little higher? I'm seeing some shaky faces. Let's say in the back, those that had the 3 and the 4. What about your students? No students. Okay. So yeah, again, probably a little bit all over the place, but I'm not seeing a lot of really confident, hey, my students are great. Let's drill down a little bit more specifically. The question's not on the board here, but what do you find most difficult for your learners? And I'll probably repeat what you say into the microphone so the people that are listening virtually can hear. Is there something that you've kind of noticed? Is it accessing email? Is it general typing? Is it internet navigation? PDFs. Okay, interesting. Okay. Is that accessing PDF? Is that sending a PDF? Is that okay? Adobe is kind of tricky. What did you? Yeah, just to devices in the internet. Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah. So one attendee was saying that just access in general, not having access to whether it's just internet connected devices or different types of devices, and it's just kind of the limited expertise is with one type of device, mainly phone. Yes, sir.
Very wide spectrum.
Yeah.
Usually, I have some students coming straight out of high school, like 17 and 18, 19 years old. Some of them, they're not in high school because of what they did on their computer.
Sure.
And then I have 55, 65, 8-year-old who thought, how do you email? But then you have that 17-year-old who just can't see the whole password.
Okay.
Or remember an email.
Okay. So just kind of some of the different age groups in the classes and how that can kind of present different issues. Yeah, for sure. So with everything you just stated, as we jump into Essential Ed and a little bit of our solution, I would love to hear, is there anything you're doing to address those? Is it kind of whack-a-mole as you see these problems pop up? You think, maybe next time that we meet, I'll kind of talk a little bit about that, or I'd be curious, what does that look like right now for you all? Yes, sir.
Part everything is having them pop on the laptop and logging into their already Essential Ed account.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. All right. I'm going to let the record state that a gentleman was unprompted and he said that he has his students log into Essential Education as a warm up. Yeah. And I like that. I think guided practice, guided tours, and that's where, again, the teacher digital literacy, as we talk a little bit later on, can be really helpful as, structured, supported practice where they're not on their own, right? If they're bumping into something, they've got their colleagues or their co-students next to them, the teacher's there, teacher potentially is also mimicking it on a screen. Those type of things can be really helpful for students to grow in their confidence. Yeah, that's good. What else? And let's get maybe one more. What is your program doing? It can be as ad hoc as it needs to be, or it can be, hey, we've got this very structured plan and curriculum. North Star, yeah, I hear that a lot. Okay. 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 Well, this will be your mini session today. We had another attendee saying that they use North Star as kind of their primary, but they just recently have access to Essential Ed's Computer Essentials, and they're interested to know a little bit more. All right. Well, let's keep jumping. Let's keep going here. So what is Computer Essentials? So Essential Ed, we have, I don't know, 10, 15 different products. So Computer Essentials is our digital literacy product. It's kind of a standalone course. As you can see here, we don't assume anything. We go from basic computer skills in our initial module all the way up through kind of internet concepts, browsing, kind of know-how. And so there's 3 main modules, and we start with a lot of the components and nuts and bolts to a degree of how to use a mouse and some of the basics of digital literacy, and then moving on up to higher level concepts. And there's a lesson in our Living Online. It talks about like social interaction online, right? That's a bigger concept beyond just understanding the nuts and bolts of a computer of, what do I need to be communicating? How do I talk in a digital sphere or forum? So we run the gamut. Yes, ma'am.
This is like its own little unit course from Computer Essentials, I know where it takes you to self-paced guide.
Yes, and I'm going to show you what that looks like in our platform here in just a few minutes, if that's what you're asking. Yes. That's a great question. Great question. And that happens a lot, where someone will buy something and not communicate it to everybody. So you can see, yep, all the other stuff, fundamental software concepts. We get into word processors. So the idea of what does that look like in a Microsoft Word or a Google Doc, right? Where you're typing letters or doing the normal things that people do in those applications. They do a little bit of work in spreadsheets, some presentation software, i.e. PowerPoint style. So we'll kind of give them an initial intro to those things. And then there's a lot of learning about, those online collaboration, online safety, scams, all that type of stuff. So we try to give them a really nice foundation of not only the basics, but then some of the applications they might use when they're going to use a computer. And then generally speaking, everything that's, the introduction of the internet, which is a big thing. Any other questions about, and it's probably going to make more sense when I show it, but any other questions about what it is or what it's not? It's 3 modules. I want to say it's like 76 lessons, and I should know the number off the top of my head. I want to say it's about 20-ish hours of content if a student were to go through it all. But the beautiful thing is you could just have the students do just the online piece, or just the applications piece, or just the nuts and bolts piece. They don't have to do it all. Yes. Yeah. Wow. That's great. Yeah. There's badging and certificates that are embedded in the course. Again, that's one of my slides. We're gonna talk a little bit about. No, I love it. You're just teeing me up. Thank you. So the three modules: computer fundamentals, maybe key applications and information, and living online. Those are the 3, and students actually have the ability to start at any one of those on their own. So I would assume, again, what I heard people in the audience say is that I have students that are kind of in lots of places. It also might depend on their goals, right? And some different things like that. So you have the ability as an instructor, and just with your kind of your expectations that you articulate, or you could go in and like force them, and you can turn things off or on in our system. But those are the 3 modules. And like I said, inside each one of those, there's probably around 4 to 6 units, anywhere from 10 to 20 lessons. So again, the content is there. But that's how it's laid out. And in module 1, computer fundamentals, you can see, I just want you to kind of basically look at this list of units there. That's where we start. So getting started, using computers, navigating, and just some of the basic understanding. Key applications and information. You can see finding information, organizing information. So thinking about those applications, or those spreadsheets, databases, interpreting and showing information. So A lot of good analysis and processing skills there. And then finally, the collaboration, which is more of those online docs and things like that. And then finally, living online. This is where I think if you were like, hey, I don't know if I have the time or space or the mental energy to infuse digital literacy content into my classroom. In my mind, this is something that I think our students they have experience in, they're interested in, they have a story, right? So if it's like you said, sir, with the warm up, I mean, all of our students have an opinion or a thought or a comment about social interaction online. Yes or no? Probably. They could probably tell you something. Hey, teacher, I had this happen. Or hey, teacher, this person said this thing to me. Privacy and security. They probably have some sort of thought or comment about it, something that happened to them or someone they know on a website, on Facebook, on something. So what I'm trying to say, these are very easy access points to start to talk and broach these subjects. And it could be something where you could just have a discussion, a writing topic in your class. And then you could say, hey, we have access to Computer Essentials. If you want to go and do more, like here's your homework, or here's the lesson and the unit you can go to really get more information. So, but like I said, I really think students, have interest and we can go and look at the specific lessons and really drill down onto what some of those things would be. But I think that like this is probably an easier place to start and get them interested in the overall idea, as opposed to like how do you right click and how do you navigate a homeroom, right? I mean, that's going to be a little bit more of a I don't want to say boring, but students aren't probably going to be as interested in talking and collaborating about those things. But again, it's important, but I'm just saying, just if you're trying to find your access point. So, yep, I mentioned this earlier. I was close. 3 modules, 17 units across those 3 modules, 76 individual lessons. And roughly, depends on the student. Do they need to go back? Do they need to review? Can they speed up? But roughly about 28 hours to complete. Not pre, but we have unit quizzes. And so if you're familiar with essential education, this looks very similar to all of our same structure. We have the initial assessment to set up a learning plan. We have the unit quizzes. We have tests at the end of each level. Each one of these modules that I mentioned, where was it at? I'm kind of jumping around. Each one of these modules has a end of unit or end of lesson level assessment. So we have tests that are embedded along the way, and then, like it was asked, we have badges and certificates that show that progress and show that mastery. So if you're familiar with Essential Ed, that's one of the things that I love to talk about, is that idea that, and maybe you have this with other systems or things, but just that a student's not having to learn a different website, right? If they're doing academic content on Essential Education, they can easily go from the academic content straight into the digital literacy. It's the same login. It's all going to look the same. And so you're not having to give them a new orientation or help explain this or that or where to go. It's all self-contained, and they should be able to navigate back and forth pretty easily. Yes, sir. Yes, pre-assessment to get started for each level. Yes. Yep. Yes, sir. Yep. And then just some big picture features before we jump into the system. We do have Spanish language support. Again, the system, just like all of our other courses and products, it's diagnostic and prescriptive. Kind of been talking a little bit about that idea of the flexibility for students to do it independently, or ways to bring it into classroom, which we'll talk a little bit more about. And like I just said, the same easy login process and homeroom. So again, there shouldn't be confused on where to go to start a lesson, or how do I look at my progress, or again, it's all going to be in the same places if they're generally already familiar with essential education. All right, so before we jump into the system, I was kind of saying what I think might be some engaging topics that students might want to interact with. I was talking about like online, social interaction, technology, privacy and security. Is there anything that you found that students really engage with, specifically specific ideas, specific content, specific topics? Yes. Mm. So just the gamification idea in general is kind of what you're saying. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. And remind me in the audience. So one of the attendees is talking about her students love Kahoot and using it. So it's kind of just like the online quiz. Is that right? Yeah. Yep. So you just go and find pre-made little quizzes about a topic, and then it's kind of, again, it's the idea of like picking the right answer fast, and there's scores. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's great. That's a great idea. Yeah, I think finding ways obviously to competition, to gamification is definitely a good with any topic. But yeah, to your point, that can be helpful. Okay, we're gonna keep going. Let's stop here and then next we'll talk about these things first. Um, So like I mentioned and like was asked about, every unit has a badge associated with it. So an individual badge, you can see this lowest badge here, this small blue circle on the screen. As they take a unit quiz and they pass that quiz, there's going to be this entire kind of widget on the far side of their homeroom. It's going to start to illuminate. So as they start to pass quizzes with, I believe it's a 70% or better, these icons, these badges will appear, but then it actually links to the external website Credly, which other organizations and companies use, and we host those badges. So what's kind of a knock-on effect or a complementary thing about Computer Essentials is that students are starting to acquire these digital, the kind of very, very micro credentials of, hey, I know I took content and learned about mobile devices. And there's a place that they can display those. They can email those to employers, to other people. And there's no employer or industry that recognizes these necessarily, but the way I like to describe them is that it's a conversation starter, right? If a student is potentially struggling in an interview or wants to have a little bit more of a backbone or structure to some skill, they can point to this and say, you know what, I spent 28 hours in my local community college or program, and I was learning about these things, and I want to tell you a little bit about them. So in my mind, I think it could give them a little bit of confidence. And we'll look a little bit about kind of where that is linked to and how they can do that. But that is an idea. So individual units, and then you can see the top one there on the screen is for the Living Online, which is one of the modules, and they take a test to get that. So again, as a way to say, hey, I understand all of these things. And then finally, if they were to complete the whole course, they would get the whole course completed badge. So that's one of the things, and I think our customers say this. We've got a couple of other colleagues in the back, but one of the things that we really stress as a company is that visual progress in our system. And so students, as they're learning, we're really trying to show them in different ways, kind of reinforce their progress, their learning, their again, kind of motivate and encourage and hopefully retain them through kind of showing them different ways that they are progressing through their content. So it's not just one simple way that that's done. And then finally, when our instructional designers created this course, they were looking at really this first one, this IC3 global standard. You can go online and students, really not just students, any single person can go in and take this test and get this certification that is industry recognized. So we looked at that as the main source of our content in terms of what we want to teach to. I think there's one component on that IC3 Global Standard 6 Level 1 test that we don't have, which is a little bit of like very basic understanding of coding and those type of things. But every other aspect about that test is what we've aligned our content to. So that is an industry recognized credential. I think if someone was going to be doing any type of tech or related job, even in very, very entry level type of job, that's a certification that would be helpful for students to have. And then we looked at these others. We looked at North Star. We looked at Octay's Skills That Matter. And we looked at the Seattle's digital equity framework as kind of looking at all that was out there a few years ago is what do we want to make to ensure that it's appropriate for adult learners. So I say all that to say, rest assured that it's not just, we just didn't say, hey, what do we want to talk about? And let's slap it together and let's give it to people. But we actually did look very in depth at what was out there. Yes, sir. I don't have that. That might be something we swing by the booth and we can talk to a couple others about it. But yeah, it's a definitely valid question, but not at the moment. Sorry. We had an attendee ask if there was any kind of success rate numbers on the Certiport test. And that's not something we like in the system and in the content we're necessarily pushing or linking to. We just like to say, hey, like, again, that's probably the closest equivalent of the alignment that we looked at when we created the course structure. But so the way if there was a population or local workforce board or whoever had said, hey, this is something that in our area that students should be moving towards, in what I could see as Computer Essentials is a really good initial overview and introduction to these concepts. And then if there is, I'm not saying they'd have to relearn these things, but if there is some other pathway, but I think Computer Essentials is a great start for students that maybe want to go down that path. All right, I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to actually go into our platform here. And let me see if I can do that. Sorry, I've got all sorts of tabs and things in the let's just start here. So Essential Education is web-based. If you're familiar with it, we do have an offline version for corrections and other institutions like that. But your students, admins, anyone would be going to a website that is your unique URL. So this is just our demonstration school. So you can see the blue link there in the middle of the screen. If you were to become a customer, we could customize that to have your organization's name. It would say your organization's name where it says demonstration there. Your students would be able to go to this site. Your teachers would be able to go to this site. Everyone's going to go to the site to log in. Students obviously are going to go to their side of the platform, and then educators are going to go to kind of the back side. Phone, tablet, desktop, laptop, any device that can be connected to the internet, right? Any student can pull it up and go to their web browser and type in there's the specific URL, essentialed.com, start, whatever it is. Then they would be able to pull this login page up. So I always like to kind of mention that all the different devices are possible as long as there's a web browser. It's going to look a little bit different. As you know, some mobile websites, when they're smaller, the screen's smaller, they kind of shift around a little bit, but in general, it's all going to work. So you as the instructor, you're going to log in, and generally speaking, our platform looks like this. There's not really a lot of changes regardless of what product you have access to. If you're familiar with our platform, we just have these large tabs across the top in terms of our navigation. We have embedded training there for various kind of nuts and bolts functions and other things. And then again, for those that I guess have access to Essential Education in the room, I'm curious, this button that says go to student homeroom up here at the very top, has anyone ever clicked on that button? Again, if you have access, I know there's a few people in the room, or again, in the chat, if you're still with me in the chat, you can let me know if you've ever clicked on that button that says go to student homeroom. Again, I like this. And again, thinking about that idea of mimicking, of displaying, of orienting students, this button here is a great way to do that. Go to student homeroom button allows educators or teachers to pull up the student experience, the generic student experience. So what you're seeing right here, and kind of serves two purposes for me, is I want to show you the student experience, but I'm also letting you know, hey, as an instructor, you have the ability to kind of do that guided practice. And I can say, hey, John, hey, Susan, you just got access to Computer Essentials. Look up here on my screen. I want to walk you through those initial steps so you understand where to go, what to click on, and I can kind of give them that guided practice before they log in. Or maybe they're logged in and they're on a device on their phone or a laptop or desktop in my room, and they're kind of just following along with me. So this image you see here is, again, the student experience. When the student logs in, they're going to see whatever courses or products they have access to. And you can see Computer Essentials down there in the bottom left. So if they're accessing and they've been studying academic content and you wanted to, for a short time, give them access to Computer Essentials, you could turn it on. It would appear. They'd log in and they could be able to get started. You might give them some specific expectations of, hey, I want you to do this 1 hour a week, or hey, every Monday when you come into class, I want you to do a little bit of Computer Essentials work before we get into other stuff. I think the more specific expectations we can give students, the better. Because if the student just had access to all this and I didn't tell them anything, I didn't tell them how to log in, I didn't say what to do with it, who knows what they're going to do with it, right? They might use it, they might not, they might spend all their time doing GED math, even though they've already passed the GED math subject. And you're like, why did you just spend 20 hours on GED math? I need you to do this other stuff. I mean, we've seen it happen. So yeah, I think giving them those specific expectations can be really helpful. And even limiting the choices, right? If this, I probably would, if this was my student, I would not have them see all of this. That's too much stuff. Each one of those is like its own textbook, right? You could kind of think of it that way. No teacher is going to put 7 textbooks on a student's desk and walk away and not say anything. So and again, this is student experience. I'm going to click on Computer Essentials. Generally speaking, just like all of our other courses, there's an initial introduction video. There's that initial assessment where we're trying to create a learning plan for the student and understand what they know and don't know. I went and I did all that before we started today, just so we could kind of look at this homeroom view. But you can see Computing Fundamentals is that first module. But if I wanted to navigate to key applications and information or living online, I can do that. And you can see since I haven't started those, you can see that it actually lets me take this initial assessment and giving me those 2 choices. Do I want to take the shorter self-assessment? Anytime you see self-assessment in essential education, it's always a shorter, a little bit simpler of an assessment. And a test is normally going to be a practice test, a little bit longer, a little bit more in depth. So depending on the student and really how much you want to drill down on what they know and don't know, you can kind of guide them on which one of those to do. But all of our courses start with that initial diagnostic there. And then once they get into the system, they're able to get right into the content. So first unit is computer skills. It says common computer skills there as the lesson there in the middle of the screen. It lets them know how long it's going to take. It gives them the description and then the big orange button, hopefully, that they won't miss as start lesson. And they can get started. One of the things that I love about our system, if I can highlight it specifically, is this linked right down here below. We have test out quizzes embedded in our course, all of our products. So again, a student's like, Mr. John, Miss Susan, I know how to do this. I don't think I need to spend my time on this. Or maybe they've done a few lessons and our system is supposed to be diagnostic and it's trying to remove everything, but it's not going to be perfect. Unless we ask the student 1,000 questions, we're not going to know every single thing the student knows and doesn't know. So that test out option allows the student to kind of speed up as needed. And so they can get to that thing they specifically need to study. You can see over here on the far right, just to show you those badges as they're progressing through the system. It's talking about these different badges here. Those different circles will illuminate. And again, as the student completes those, this would become hyperlinked and it would say, claim your badge. And then it would take them to the external website, Credly, as we talked about, as they go through and do these different quizzes. And they can get and have those badges, share those badges on social media, or like I said, via email, and all of those things. Certificates would start to pop up down here as they take those tests, their final assessment when they're ready. All that stuff would appear here. But in general, they're mainly going to be using this kind of widget, this box in the middle, to access their content. I'm going to click on this lesson. I should have had a good demo lesson ready to show you. Let's see what happens here. So Leonard is going to be talking. I don't think I shared my sound through this computer, but he's introducing this idea. Let's see if I can get this toolbar to hide, and then we'll go back. So he's talking about clicking on links, buttons, icons. So again, this is very, very, very basic practice. They're learning how to actually just click on this box here. So there's some very simple things. So looking at buttons, clicking buttons isn't too hard. And so now they're wanting you to look at the play pause. So again, they're showing you different icons and different ways that this could look, of things they might need to do. So there's a lot of basic interaction in Computer Essentials, which I like. They get that basic practice and then they get tutorials and understanding about those things. Again, this is the very first lesson and the very first unit. So keep that in mind. Clicking on words. So again, they're just trying to explain those things, and hopefully they're going to see this and be able to click into this and look at that and go there. So again, there is audio to this. Again, just with the setup for today, we don't have that. But yeah, hopefully you get the idea. The other thing I love about our system all across all of our products is we have the menu tab inside all of our lessons. So students have the ability to go and navigate to any specific piece of a lesson. So they're like, I understand this. I don't need to spend 4 minutes having 2 minutes having someone talk to me about it. I just want to go in and go straight to the practice, see if I understand it. And so they can do that. They have the ability to kind of move as they need to. For most adults, we're hoping that makes sense. Probably for some younger students, maybe they're going to abuse that power. But in general, there is that ability to navigate as needed. And again, allow the learner, kind of the target audience, the adult learner, to kind of go where they need to go based on kind of their experience. We're not trying to limit and say, hey, you need to watch this 45-minute video before we let you go do anything else. There's nothing like that in our system. This review tab, and just so you all see this, there you do have, as students are progressing through the content, if there are things that they don't know how to do based on their quizzes and their tests, this review tab will start to populate with those concepts that they need to go back and look at. So that's here. And then if you were to assign content, assigning content is a feature across all of our products. You can assign, if you wanted to create a very curated, like teacher directed, I only want my students doing these 8 lessons. The state of Arkansas, I don't know if anyone's in here from Arkansas, they have done that in the past where they just have, here's our list of things approved from the state. We want you to do these units or these specific lessons. And you can just create a kind of a paper list of those things, or you could come in and you could assign it and there'd be another tab that would pop up right here and it would have those lists of things you want them to study, and they could just do just that list and they could ignore the plan that we've created. So there's different ways to use Computer Essentials. Again, it just depends on your students and what they need and their goals and what your goals are. And then the last thing I would just show you is, I always like to tell users this is, if you wanted to be very kind of student directed or very hands off, but you want them to kind of look at specific things, there is this choose a lesson, which allows students to go to any lesson in any unit. So again, you could be very hands off. You could just write it on the board. Hey, everybody, when you're in Essential Ed, I want you to go to understanding the internet. What is the internet? And so you could just write that down, and that's all you have to do. And then when they get in there, as long as they know how to find this, you'd probably want to. Yeah. Yeah. As long as they know how to find this. Again, this is the student experience. There on this review tab, there is the ability to choose a lesson. Again, this academic content, you could do this for any of our products. And and I always like to kind of talk about it in that idea of kind of being student directed. Or again, if you as a teacher don't want to go in and assign something, or maybe your teachers have a hard time assigning something. Yeah. Yeah. You can just write it on the board. You could text them, you could email them. Hey, everybody, we were talking about internet in general today. I want you to go try some of the lessons in Essential Education. Click on review, click on choose a lesson, and then I want you to do understanding the internet. And that's all you'd have to do. As long as they do it, then they go and find it, hopefully. Yes, sir.
When you hit that review tab, you guys have workbooks that coincide with it.
Oh, yeah.
Specifies the exact paper. Is there a paper workbook that goes with Computer Essentials?
There's not, no, unfortunately.
Is there
Beyond this website? Yeah. No, all of our digital literacy content is self-contained in what you see here. Yeah, it's a good question, though. Any other questions, generally speaking, about the student experience or what this could look like or what it is, what it isn't?
I know it's like, if someone comes in and, like the school door, I'm paid, and I can just go ahead and do a,
Mhm. Mm-hmm.
do they have, that's the part, because it seems like one, seems to me like if I'm thinking right, one of them you can, but the other one you can't.
So you're specifically talking about our academic content. You are in one way, shape, or form, you're required to take an initial assessment. That initial assessment can be a practice test. So yeah, yep. So just like you saw here, I'll just show you this demonstration since we're talking about Computer Essentials. But just imagine that this at the top, rather than work ready, it says high school equivalency, and it says GED or HiSET over there in that yellow where it says Computer Essentials. When they see a screen that with these two options, the self-assessment is always going to be that short test, but the one that says practice test is going to be the test that you would want to direct your students to take, because that'll be whether, again, HiSET or GED, it's going to give them that score that's on that same scale of 100 to 200, or what is HiSET, 0 to 20. So yeah, the practice test, if that's what you want, you would always want to make sure that they take that test. No, do you? I wouldn't have them do that. Well, that would be a good initial indicator to you of where they're going to fall, because a lot of teachers don't know, right? They're like, I don't know really where my student is at. I don't know if how ready they are, and that's a good initial indicator. Say, oh wow, they scored a 138 or 172 or what, or HiSET maybe a 12. I don't know if that's a really good number, but what is the passing score for HiSET? Caleb, do you know? 8. I was gonna. Okay. So you want like a 14, really, to kind of bump that average way up. No? Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. So you really want a 16. Gotcha. Okay. So as we kind of wrap up this kind of student-centric conversation / review here, again, just highlighting that, again, when students log in, they can see what courses they have access to. They could go from academic to computer or some other content and back and forth as needed. All our study time tracks regardless of what course they're in. That's one thing that this view, because I'm still logged in as a teacher, if you remember, that's the one thing that this view does not mimic, is when students log in, there is a big pop-up window that says, are you studying in class with your teacher or out of class? So we're trying to bucket that study time as kind of those out of class proxy hours or those in class. And so that's the one experience in this simulation here that we don't simulate for, but in general, every time a student logs in, they're going to have a big pop-up window. Yes, question in the back. Yeah, let's do it. I'm gonna show it to you from a different angle, if that's okay. Just so we can look at where would an instructor find the content. How about that? So we were back in that, we were initially was logged in as an educator. I showed you that, hey, you can click this cool button to kind of see what the student experience is like. And so we've been doing that this whole time. Now I want to go back and let's talk about it from an instructor point of view. So there's this orange button here that says return to LMS. Again, students don't have this button. This is just for you when you're logging in as an instructor. And now I'm back in the kind of the educator, admin, teacher side. And if I wanted to go back to the student experience, click that go to student homeroom and I'm back, return to LMS. So, all right, so let me ask you, if you can see the screen, if I want to look at the content, which tab should I click on? I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. Is it student progress? Is it reports? Is it content maps, training resources, or admin? Content maps. Yeah, we're going to click on content maps. And this can allow us, if you have access to Computer Essentials, or you want to have access or demo it or something, and you're like, I'm really curious, what do all those tests look like that Charlie was talking about at COABE? Or I'm really curious, as she just said, hey, what does the intermediate content look like? You could create a student account and slowly go through it all, or do that choose a lesson, or from your side of things, by clicking on content maps, you can pull up the entire sequence of content. We could look at key applications and information or living online. We could look at either one of those. I don't know if you have a preference, Miss. These are the 3 modules that, and I mean, it kind of gets more difficult as it goes, but again, it's just more, I think, about the topics are a little bit different, but which one? Computer fundamentals. So that's that initial unit, but yeah, we can take a look at some of those lower level, so computer basics was what we just did. Getting started, you can see here, it's maybe hard to see, but the lessons are over here on the left, and you're able to preview those or pull them up. You can pull the lesson up the way a student could. Computer desktop, and then it goes into using computers, so forms and media, touchscreen, keyboarding, navigating menus, navigating links, navigating search, using help, adapting to new technology, ways to interact with computers, what is a computer, an operating system, getting around the web, what is the internet, how to connect to the internet. So those are all of the lessons inside of these units. I'm just going to click on operating systems because I probably need to learn more about what an operating system is. And again, there's going to be audio. It's just going into one of these devices here, which I should know what's happening. Leonard's talking. Again, there's audio that's playing. I'm going to click on the closed caption so we can hear. He's explaining what that is and what that looks like. If a student needed to look at the transcript of what's being said. So oh, I thought I could hear it. So there's a little bit of guided practice. So right now it's just what is an operating system? I'm going to click on this first choice. So some of the lessons are going to be more, just informational, right? Of like, hey, let's just learn about what these concepts are. We do have some that are going to be more practice, and then there's a little bit of a mix. You can see here as I got this question wrong, it's kind of what I can there's reteaching here with this explanation, go back in and look at it, understand it more, or I can go to the next question as the student, kind of so on and so forth. But as you can see here, all of the content is available for educators to review, to preview, to pull up like I just did. You could, if you were like thinking about an implementation idea, if you wanted to just do it together as a group, you'd not even have students do it on their own. Again, you could start with an initial discussion about, I don't know, we could pick a topic closer to the bottom. Thinking about, you could ask the question, write it on the whiteboard. Hey, what is the internet? You let your students think about it. They could write down their ideas. They could talk to each other. Then you could say, hey, I'm going to pull up this lesson from Essential Education. Let's take 15 minutes. Let's all do this together. 5 minutes, whatever you want, whatever time limit you want to have. And we could click through together. And so the teacher's navigating through the screens. Maybe the teacher is deciding where to show those videos, where not to show the videos, because, hey, we already talked about that. But you could be in control of this screen. But again, if you have the ability and the connectivity in your classroom to show this like I'm doing right here, you could say, let's do this lesson together. And then you could go into the questions together. And you can say, hey, I don't want anyone to shout out the answer, write it down or come up with your own idea and raise your hand when you have the answer. And then whatever it looks like. But you could do that. And, then you could pull up the questions and go through it together. So that's one way you could potentially use our content. And again, it could be topic driven, it could be current event driven, or you could just know that here are the 10 things I want to make sure this semester, this cohort, you could look through this entire sequence and say, here are the 10 things that I think are most important, or my community college or my whoever. And I wanted to make sure my students have a general understanding about these things. And that would be one way to do it. Every Friday we do Essential Ed for the first 25 minutes, do it as a group. Next Friday, we're gonna have a different topic. It could be as simple as that. For maybe those students that want to dive deeper, then maybe you could figure out how to give them access or assign it and talk about it. But yes. No. Mm-hmm.
Will it make the learning plan off of that?
Whichever one of those initial assessments they take, yes, that's what that's doing. When I showed you that screen that had the two, like the yellow or the blue bubbles, practice test, in whatever course, whatever subject they're starting, it's trying to prescribe a plan based on that. So if they just go in and get them all wrong and just try to do it as fast as possible, it's going to say you need to start at level 1, lesson 1, unit 1. If they go in and they get some of it right, we're trying to remove stuff that we think that they understand based on those results. Yes. And that's across every product we have. Yep. Great question. Yeah. Question was asked about the assessments and the diagnostic aspect of them. All right. Did that answer your question generally about the content? And again, this is just computer fundamentals, right? Living online is that last module. There's things that says social interactions, so participating in internet communities, anonymity on the internet. That might be important. A good, just big picture conversation with your students. So what do you share on social media? Is that good to do? Is that bad to do? So I think that's kind of where I'm talking about. I think there's easy access points to privacy on the internet, internet copyright issues. Maybe they'd be interested in that, maybe not. technology risk. I think would probably be something that students would be interested in kind of thinking about, websites tracking you, keeping your phones and devices safe, things like phishing and keeping kids safe, all that stuff. These are initial introductions to these ideas and these topics that, again, you could probably bring into your classroom in a pretty easy way. Yes, sir.
You have a lesson, AI, advantages of this all.
I don't think we do. We created this content about 2 or 3 years ago. Not that AI wasn't around then, but I think it's something that we're definitely talking about. But as of right now,
Is there like a built-in thing where they?
yeah, it's like a kind of a mock. One of our attendees was asking with the word processor and spreadsheet kind of applications if there was a way to do it. And yeah, it's just built into that lesson kind of module. Good question. Again, the three, that should give you guys a quiz. So we have three main modules, right? We talked about that. So computer fundamentals is kind of the nuts and bolts. The one in the middle, key applications and information, is our second kind of level unit module. And so in here would be, that idea of finding information, you can see here, finding, evaluating, using traditional tools, but then organizing information is going to be, as you can see, some of those organizing the files on a computer. So you think about like desktop and those different folders, but then also the spreadsheets. You can see here there's 2 or 3 lessons on spreadsheets. Interpreting and showing, so organizing written information, creating tables, charts, and graphs. So that's not just, you think about the academic side of things where like they're trying to understand tables, charts, and graphs. Well, here they're actually learning how to create those. So it kind of is taking it to that next level, and then presenting. So again, some of those presentation tools, and then the online collaboration, which is all the different ways we could potentially interact. You could chat and messaging, voice and video calls, giving feedback, Google Drive, if again, a Google is something you all use, but at least that's an introduction to the idea of kind of the online repository. Yeah, a lot of stuff. So let's Viviana, or I don't know, someone in the audience, I feel like I don't know if I'm supposed to end at 1 o'clock, but I just want to make sure I stay on track here with you all. Keep me on track with where we need to be. As you guys can tell, I like to talk. Yes. Yeah. Once they finish units and pass the quiz, they would get kind of the unit quiz badge. And then once they get all of those badges for living online, then they would get that badge and I believe accompanying certificate as well. Great question. So I'd be love to hear like some of your thoughts. I've tried to infuse a few ideas along the way with my presentation. Personally, for me, I think from what I heard you all say, if you don't have a standalone class, if you don't have like a Friday elective, hey, on Friday you pick what you want to do, and you can come in the morning to technology class, or you can come to keyboarding, or I don't know, something else. I mean, I've seen that model. There's probably a lot of other ways it could look. It seems like what I see as one of the most common approaches is like we kind of talked about. It's just an additional topic, an additional idea that educators have to consider implementing on top of the academic, on top of maybe helping them maybe prepare for a job, and other things. And so it's tricky to figure out how do I keep that at least somewhat at the forefront, or occasionally come back to that. And I really do think it comes down to just how can I come up with a plan. When I was in the classroom about, I don't know, 10 to 15 years ago, I tried to do this, but I probably wasn't super consistent is probably the right word. But hey, every Wednesday and Friday for the first 20 minutes of class, we're going to be doing, computer digital literacy related topics. Maybe that's on the board, maybe they know that, whatever that looks like, but just having a schedule, communicating that, that would be my approach, where they can see that, they know that, we can talk about it. And for those students who maybe don't need it, maybe they show up 20 minutes late because, hey, I'm just going to, rather than come into class at 9, I'm going to come at 9:30 because I know they're going to be talking about, learning how to right click on a mouse, and that's not where I'm at. So they show up and they're ready to kind of get started with the other things. But when you communicate it, then everybody can plan accordingly, right? And again, just trying out different ways to incorporate it. It could be just at home on their own. It could be in class. It could be like I showed you with the teacher at the front of the room. It could be, just starting with discussion questions, writing prompts. There's ways to kind of make that work. Again, for different students and different goals. Pre and post activities, that's kind of what I was just kind of alluding to, but it could be with whatever topic you have. If you do have access to um, our content and specifically the computer essentials, there's ways you can print out that entire list of the content I was just showing, and you could just have it. And you're like, hey, we're talking about this academic subject. Is there any computer essentials content that's related to that, right? Maybe you're doing math, charts, and graphs. You're like, I wonder if I could, for those that are interested, I could point them towards this other computer essentials related thing as just a way to make somewhat of an easy connection. We were just talking about charts and graphs and math, and we went over it. We practiced some stuff in the academic. Maybe this would be a great place for them to come over and I could either assign it or they could go do that, choose a lesson and practice that in a little bit of a different capacity. Yes, sir.
Sheet rock, that cover.
I'm going to say no, but I don't know off the top of my head. It's a great question. Probably maybe on that spreadsheets number 3 lesson. I mean, if you want to stick around after, we can pull it up and we could look, but off the top of my head, I'm not sure. But great question. Attendee asked about the spreadsheets lessons and if it covers formulas. And then I think, again, thinking about feedback with whatever we do, I think that's one of the big things in any session I'm always doing about essential ed or just online curricula in general. It's, making sure that we're providing good feedback to students, right? Not just letting them work, on their own devices, right? That's a phrase we use, but in this instance here, it's kind of a pun, leave them to their own devices. Students get discouraged, I think, when that happens, right? If they're just on their own, no one's ever really telling them how they're doing or checking in on them. I think I would assume a lot of students are thinking, does my teacher even know I'm doing this? Does my teacher even really care that I'm doing this? Am I even doing the right thing? And so I think, again, giving them a little bit of direction, a little bit of communication, and then occasionally figuring out how to provide that feedback. And again, that can look in any way, shape, or form. Students just want their attempts and their effort to be recognized more than anything, right? And I think they just want to know, hey, John, I see you. Great job. I saw you were working on that. Looks like you spent some time in there. You're doing great. Keep doing it. Come find me if you have any questions. Like, that's all that needs to be done. And they'll know, hey, I'm on the right track. So thinking about feedback as well, I think is important when if you start to think about a way to implement it and you're starting to do that. What about you all? Just zoom way out. Anything that you've done in terms of digital literacy in general, topics, ideas that you feel like either you, a colleague, or someone else you've seen that seems to work well, or at least kind of engages students, excites them, motivates them, or obviously, trains them and teaches them. Anything that you've seen that works? And again, it could be curricular, it could just be a practice, an instructional practice. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 new essential ed users. Okay. Sounds like a plan. No, it's tricky. I think in juggling all the different things that need to be done makes it tricky. So I think bite size, right? Communicate that, start very small. Like I said, I like finding those entry points of like, what are the things my students are going to be most interested in thinking about, brainstorming, communicating, collaborating, or even writing, right? You can start with a writing topic. What is the internet? Have them write a couple paragraphs about it, and then that can lead into that lesson specifically for those that need it. It could just be, hey, I signed this if you want it. It'll be there if you log in. If you need a review on how to do that, I can show you. But it's kind of a way, it can be a jumping off point for those that want to have access to it. Okay, I think I'm done. We talked a little bit about that, or I tried to ask you a little bit about what you kind of go to. Any final thoughts from anyone in the room? Ideas, things you want to share? Any cool things happening in your neck of the woods, as we say? No? Okay, that's fine too. Well, we talked a little bit about kind of where we're at. I kind of quizzed you all on your teachers, your fellow teachers, your students, and it was kind of all over the board in terms of their abilities. We talked a little bit about what Computer Essentials is, right? It's the 3 modules. It's a standalone course, 28, 25 hours of content that your students can access. They don't have to do all 28 hours. Remember, they can kind of split it up. There's a lot of good content available. Like I said, I think it's a great entry point and an introduction to a lot of these concepts. We're not drilling down, and they're not going to be getting a master's degree in IT with what we have. But I think for our students who want an introduction to a lot of these concepts, it's a great place to start. It is line to standards, and there are a lot of different ways you can use it. So that's my spiel. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, go to student homeroom. Go to student homeroom, and nope, you just click that and you could go from point A all the way to the end of the line with any of our products as a student. You could take all the tests, you could take all the lessons. Yep, you could. Yep. Yeah. We had an attendee ask about just using how to go through it herself if she wanted to. And we kind of talked about this idea of just go to student homeroom, and with any of the courses that a student or a teacher has access to, they could go from the beginning all the way to the end if they wanted to as a student.
You have you modeled Leonard Maria and Surfer Duty after.
Uh, Yeah, Leonard is a voice actor. Dwayne Surfer Dude, we're updating his voice. So some people think that he kind of lays it on a little thick. Um, but yeah, those are real voice actors that we've used. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, well, I've heard. I don't know if I need to find out if we actually implemented it, but supposedly Dwayne was going to be toned down a little bit. He kind of sounds like the California guy, a little, yeah. If I don't know if that's the right place for him, but anyways, yeah. Well, thank you. So that's what I have today. We passed out catalogs. If you're interested, hopefully at least you learn a little bit more about our product, but even more than that, hopefully you're just brains thinking a little bit more about some ideas and ways you can infuse more specific digital literacy content. I know it's definitely not easy. Like I said, I understand that with all the other things you have to do. I didn't do a great job of it as a teacher, but hopefully you all are thinking about some ways to start small is I think what I would say. So thank you all so much. I'll be here. I'm happy to kind of show you anything, talk about anything. But yeah, you're free to go, and appreciate everybody for being here.